Good afternoon to you, and as I say, I hope a lot of you don't have the sleepies, because one thing you must be sure, if I see you sleeping, I ask you a question. And there's nothing as embarrassing as being asked a question when you're not prepared for it. I know, I'll tell you, many times, I'll tell you who I am in a minute, but many times when I go and do presentations, I get stuck the last of the afternoon. And everybody skipped out to go to the bar or to go to the pub or go home or whatever it may be. This time I got smart. I said, put me in about midday. Why? Because if you got the sleepies, you're not going to pick up the mistakes. And number two, I catch you before you all bugger off. So that's it. My name is Steve Simon. Currently I work for a company in Providence, Rhode Island. You'll see in a couple of minutes' time. I'm supposed to show you this. These are the various different things that PASS has to offer. How many people are not members of PASS? Oh, shame on you. Scum. You must, that comes, I'll tell you that in a minute. I originally spent 23 years in Southern Africa and speak a brand of kitchen Dutch called Afrikaans. People from Holland will know what that is. Okay, basically speaking, it's a great organization. Do yourself a favor. Speak to somebody who has joined PASS. Lots of educational training. PASS sponsors a lot of these events, and it's really, really a phenomenal organization to really belong to. Amen. Moving forward, just to give you a bit about who I am, I work for Atrium Networking Corporation in Providence, Rhode Island. That's in the United States. I'm involved with database design for 30 years, and I graduated from university about 2 years ago. The gray hair, I just dyed gray. Presented numerous passes, SQL Saturday events. I did the Copenhagen event 3 years ago. Yeah, I did that one then. And SQL Saturday events, numerous rallies. And I do a lot of writing for SQLShack.com. How many people have heard of SQLShack.com? Okay, do yourself a favor. A couple of the articles that I wrote are on there. I'm not advertising myself. It's a great source of free how-to-do-its. And I don't like I don't like the airy-fairy stuff, you know, the highly theoretical stuff. I want to, as a BA developer, you know, or a BI developer, I want to learn if I'm looking for a technique, I want to Google it and find out exactly how to do it in the first 20 minutes. And I think a lot of us are like that. Okay? That's it. Move on. A couple of tweets, and who I am. I'm SQL Server Boffin. There's my address. If you want any more, it's mostly on my card. Amen. All right. A bit of a history about me. I worked for State Street Bank, and I'll ask again, how many people have heard of it? They're about the same size as Deutsche Bank. Okay? Yeah. And I was involved in a data warehouse project to go and make a warehouse. And we're going to have a look at two particular cases this afternoon. And this is not heavy stuff. I'm not going into real heavy stuff. I got two practical demos. One is very thought-provoking, and the other one is something you should have been doing in the first place. Now, my wife tells me not to get carried away. You're dealing with a European audience, but nobody can tell me that a European audience is not the best audience in the world, and I firmly believe this. That's why I'm here, and I try and avoid the American ones. I really do. Okay, moving on. The problem that we found when we developed the financial data warehouse at State Street, they got about 15 trillion, American trillion dollars, not billion, not milliards, but another 3 zeros of assets under management. We were looking at things like the general ledger, positions. How many people do not know what positions are? Everybody knows what a position is? Because I'm going to be talking about it. So it's clear as mud or glass. All right, look. We'll talk a bit about that in a couple of minutes' time when we get into it. But we're talking about millions and millions of records. I mean, this is a massive data warehouse. Now, when it was originally designed, this thing was to go DB2 COBOL. Okay? How many people have done DB2 and COBOL? Come on, put up your hands. We've all done it at one time or another, or Fortran, right? Okay. This project was originally designed for DB2, but somebody in management, you know, they got about 15 layers of management, in their infinite wisdom, decided that what they were going to do is they were going to put it onto SQL Server. Now, there's nothing wrong with that because you're supposed to be developing a warehouse. And what do we know about warehouses? Warehouses are normally denormalized. Is that a fair statement? Please be critical. I want you to talk to me, because remember, if I see you got the sleepies, I may just ask you a question. Okay, now, the problem is right from the get-go, right from the start, they tried to do a certain amount of normalization to an extent that they got to third normal form. And I'm going to show you a slide in a couple of minutes' time, and I'm sure that everybody's here has been involved in designing a warehouse. This presentation should be renamed What Not to Do. Now, much of it you've probably encountered it yourself. It's it's no PhD thesis. But when you run into these things, you got to tell people about it so that they can avoid the same pitfalls as you have. If I'm talking too quickly, please tell me. My wife tells me I'm always talking too quickly. Okay. All the requirements. How many times have you got a set of work requirements and you know that it's not complete? Or you get surprises at the end. We forgot something. That comes into my second example that I'm going to show you. We're 28 days from implementation and they forgot the downstreams. Now, how stupid can you get? Global organization. Now, State Street, like Deutsche Bank, is 24/7 because they got offices in Japan, Alameda, California. I got to keep going east. They got an office in Boston. That's the main office in Boston. They got London, Munich, and the Far East, and Australia. So it's 24/7 hit on the machine. Okay? Did they contact anybody there? No. But we'll talk about that. I don't want to hit too much on this. That's not proper business. Handling vast amount of data. I said to you in the first place, it was originally designed for a COBOL application, COBOL DB2. Controlling ad hoc queries. Oh, this is my favorite. Really, it is my favorite. How many people have got power users that know everything there is to know about SQL Server and more? And they know more than you do. And these are the people, honestly, folks, these are the people that worry me because they're dangerous. Imagine what they can do. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples. One guy in Munich. Anybody here from Munich? I call this the Munich disaster. Ran a query in his infinite wisdom. It ran 25 hours and returned 4 rows. Okay, I got to go to church on Sunday. Honest to God, that was the story. And you got to do the damage control. You know, we have a commercial in the United States where somebody's blaming somebody else and there's a little goat that runs across the screen. You know the old scapegoat? So it's, you know, the witch hunt, or as we call it there. You know, going on a witch hunt to find out who did it. So these are things that are going to get talked, and we're going to talk about as we go on forward. And we obviously want to try and reach a 999 uptime. Okay? And this really doesn't come into it, but it's very important when you're working on a 24/7. All right. Warehouse design will change with time. I'm not telling you anything. That's not a PhD thesis, okay? That's not rocket science. However, you have to be able to be prepared to go and change the warehouse, as we're going to see in the second example that I'm doing. As I mentioned to you again, we were going to look at 2 examples. The first one is how not to do a mainframe application on a server. And the second one is a total disaster, which is something that I got dragged into with my own firm. And that is a total mess. So these are the things I want to try and impact upon you so that if you go away, you hate what I told you and know for a fact that this is what's going on in your organization in one shape or another. All right. One that failed, one that potentially going to fail. The financial data warehouse. These are a sample of a couple of the tables that you could probably go. Obviously, you know, I fudged the data because it was financial and it was obviously very sensitive. But that is not a warehouse. That, to me, is a transactional database table. There's just a couple there, but you can see from the fact there that it's third form normal. That's the type of thing it is. Now, how many people have heard of the Michael Jackson and not the singer? You heard of Michael Jackson, the computer specialist? Yeah, okay. There was a guy back in the 1970s, and that's with us gray hair guys, you and myself, you know, and everybody's got gray hair. We know. He said that when you're designing a warehouse, and there weren't concept of warehouses at the time, it was just basically speaking tables. Design your table structure to pull your data according to the type of reports that you're going to do. Now, does that make sense? Because the problem is, in the case of the Munich thing, we had the design set, we put the stuff together, and then all of a sudden somebody says, hey, but you know what? There's a field in this little abstract table that we've got over there that we've got to join. Now, how many people use GUIDs? Oh. GUIDs are, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay. The problem with GUIDs is that when you try and put them in as a primary key, you got an issue because you never know where they're stored. Unless you keep re-indexing. Okay? They're easy to go for transactional data, but when it comes to reporting, it's a nightmare. And especially if you're dealing with that type of structure over here. Okay, moving on. That's the type of crap we had to deal with. Okay? And that's not conducive to writing reports in a warehouse. I am of the belief, and you can call me wrong, you denormalize as much as you can. I'd rather carry extra fields than do joins. But then again, I'm going to talk to you later on about getting rid of all the fields that you don't really use. How many people have got tables that have got fields that they use every single flipping field in the table? How many people think they could trim a couple of fields knowing that what they know now? Correct. And that's the way I believe it myself. And I'm going to show you a case in a couple of minutes' time. Now, it got to a point. Oh, I love this one. This is a cutie. This is a cutie. That's one query. Can everybody read that? 7 hours, 21 minutes, and 40 seconds to run. I can't fudge that. There's the time. Okay? So this is a no-no. Now, the question I'm asking you this, I want to ask a poll question. I'm going to look for the first person that looks dozy. All right. How many seconds will a standard user wait for his data to come back? 5. Correct. Most people will only wait 5 seconds for their data to come back. And then what happens? They say the thing isn't working, and they hit it again. You know, the go button. You know, find it. And then it doesn't come back, and it goes, go again. All right? But the thing that they often forget is that there's middleware underneath there that sent the request off to the database, and now the middleware has got an accumulation of jobs that have gone off to go, and I call them jobs. You can see I'm a mainframe person. And, excuse me. And it's gone off to go and fetch the stuff, and you can eventually see that there's going to be a crash in the system. So that's at point 2. Okay. That's the type of crap they were producing. Now, is there any need for that? That's the question I ask you. Remember, most of you have to go to church on Sunday. Would you produce a piece of code like that? You'd be laughed out. Okay, that's what we had to do. And that is a result of poor planning. Okay, just a couple of slides. There were about 1,500 queries and extracts. Some of those tables contain something like about 200 fields. Is there any need for a table to have 200 fields, even in finance? Because you go to the users, and the users say, I need A, B, and C. Another user says he needs D, E, and F. The next one, it needs H, I, J, whatever you want. Do you understand? And you got a whole wild pile of fields. You got to sit down and whittle it out. What do they really need? The danger, as far as I'm concerned, are these two animals here. And I mean it nicely. These are the people that I worry about. Okay? Because these are the guys that create that Munich disaster I showed you. All right? 30 seconds, yeah, sometimes, but mostly it's 5 seconds. When you're dealing with heavy financial report, people know that it's going to take a bit longer. This is a major thing. You got to make sure that the users know what they want, and that's a useless even statement. It's a waste of time stating it, because users don't in their own mind know what they want. And bear with me, say I'm wrong, but the problem is until they see what you've produced, they know what is missing. They never know the first time round what they want. And if I'm wrong, please put your hand up and say I'm wrong. Or I'll ask you a question. Okay, so what are the solutions? Right. We came up with the idea of a data access layer, not to be confused with data access layers from Visual Studio. What are these things in terms of SQL Server function? I gave it away. SQL Server terms, it's creating a user function. So what's new about user functions? Okay. The problem we had at State Street, call it Deutsche Bank or whatever you want, is that you empower users and your business analysts like to do their own queries. Letting users go and do their own queries are dangerous. It is dangerous because you don't know what they're going to do to the system. So what we did was we came up with the idea of a data access layer, which is a user function which would pull 200 fields. I'm just saying 200, okay? But the queries were optimized. And what we did was I'm going to show it to you in a minute. We put this stuff into a user function that they could pass parameters through. All right? Now, working with Finance 101, and then I'll carry on with the DAL. Deutsche Bank or Volvo or Danacord or any of these other companies are what normally have a fund with a mutual fund guardian company like Deutsche Bank or whatever it may be. The fund is normally the name of your thing, like, I don't know, Deutsche Bank or whatever it's the name of your company or whatever you call it. That fund holds assets. And it could be in telephone companies or cigarette companies, Philip Morris, whatever you want. And we buy the share, you buy your stock in lots. That's 101. And that was all taken into consideration. That's the way we operate, essentially. Now, we're going to have a look at the positions. How many people do not know what a position is? Please put up your hand if you don't know what a position is. How many people know what positions are? Great. Okay. A position is the value of your portfolio or various different stock. I'm going to use the word loosely, okay? Stock that you've got in the investment fund. It has a value. It's valued every afternoon normally at about 4 o'clock at the close of the stock market. When the DAX closes or when the CAC 40 closes, everything is valued. So that you can tell your client, you know, your stock is, and I'm saying it very loose terms, your stock is worth X number of euros at this particular point in time. Okay, and that's very important because these people check their stuff to see, especially pension funds, they check to see that their performance is where they want to be. And that's what a position is. Fair statement? Description? Good. Questions? Please put up your hands if you got a question. If you want to shoot me down, please do it. I just hate seeing the faces of pain. Okay. What is a DAL? It's like a bowling ball. Do you guys have 10-pin bowling here? Kegling. No. I know, this is a developed country. It is. Oh, you're from Poland? You take me too seriously. Okay. What you do is you put your parameters into the black box. It processes the goodies, and the results come out. You like it? It's yours. Okay. This is a piece of DAL code. You can see over here, I've created a function, and I pass through a list of parameters, and this is what it returns. It returns a table var. Okay? Now, recapping. The reason we are doing this is because we want to put a piece of code in there that will pull the data of 100 to 200 fields in the most efficient and effective manner. And we'll let them pull whatever fields they want to from the stuff that is coming back. Now, there's not one DAL. There's a gazillion DALs, but they've all been properly tuned. Okay? And sniffed. How many people know what parameter sniffing is? How many people do not know what parameter sniffing is? Okay. The guys that know went to go and see, what's his name yesterday? If you produce a stored procedure, what we tend to do is we tend to have our pet values that we do when we test. Fair statement? You have your test for user 1 or user 5 or test user or whatever it may be. when you compile your function or your stored procedure by creating it, it gets optimized by the optimizer. And it gets set in stone that it uses this execution plan within the cache. The moment you go something in from the left-hand side of the pitch, it may take longer because the plan is no longer optimal. And hence, as a result, it takes more time to get the data out. That's it from 50 million yards or 50 million meters. Do you have a rough idea what parameter sniffing is now? Want me to repeat it? Come see me afterwards. Okay? It's something that you got to watch. Now, all right, this is the actual code from the DAL. There's approximately 4,600 lines of code in here. And I hope you all got that because there'll be a quiz afterwards. Okay? Now, going through to running the thing, sorry. What I've got is my standard use statement here. And what I've got here is to free the session cache to make sure that I'm not, running the same lot again. So what it does is it executes and clears everything out of cache. And what it's running is it's pulling out, I have a piece of standard TSQL over here. Can you all see it in the back, or do you want me to enlarge it more? Is it okay? Good. All right. This is the standard statement. This is nothing big. Excuse me. Take a swig of water. The next portion inside there, the subquery, is done from the user function, which is called get pause sum, get the summary positions. Now, the trick is in the predicate. Who does not know what a predicate is? A where clause. Okay? Now, what they can do is they can put a fund in and the asset ID. Remember, it could be, I don't know, Danacord or whatever it may be. Put in the assets in there. These are 3 assets in here. Okay? They can put in the start date and the end date, etc. on the thing. Okay? And then what they can do is they can run it with a start date, end date, whatever it may be, and produce it. Now, the trick is this. Somebody's going to say, well, you have to go and put in a fund, a this, and a that, or you have to put a default in. But what happens if they don't want to put in a fund, but they only want to put in assets? You had to be able to cater the query to be able to go, the function, user function, to be able to create that type of thing. All right? Now, I'm going to show you something afterwards that's worth the price of sitting here to listen to me talk for 1 hour. All right? We're going to use a case statement in the predicate to make sure that we can be flexible. But I need you to all understand what I'm doing here before I show it to you. Some guys may want to put a fund through. Some may want to put an asset through. But the problem is, and there really is a problem, that you can't push nothing through, because if you push nothing through, it's null, and they can't find anything to match an AND situation where it's null. Because there's always a fund or there's always an asset ID. Who does not see that? Listen, I believe you, but millions wouldn't. Okay. Right. Where are we now? Oh. If I go back to the slideshow, it'd be great. Okay. This is how I handle the predicate. How does SQL Server parse? Left to right. Now, no problem. No problem. Try it again. All right. If I had passed through an empty set, I want 1 to equal 1. Why? Because that is true. And it won't filter anything on fund or asset or whatever you've got. Now, if he has put a list through of the assets, then it will not be 1 because this is not going to be null or blank, so it's 2. Now 1 does not equal 2, therefore it's false. Therefore it goes to the OR statement. It says parse the asset list. Now is that cool? Now isn't that worth coming to an lecture for, to be able to find out how to do it? Because that's one of the things I've always wanted to do and never had the guts to ask. Cool, eh? All right? If you want more of it, it's yours. I'll email it to you or give it to you. It's pretty Mickey Mouse. All right. No, that's not where I want to be. Where's my presentation? I'll lose my presentation. Huh. Okay. So much for technology. All right. The lessons learned, because that's what we're here for. By the way, I don't know who put LEARNED is on the original presentation. It's spelled with a T. All right. How many people have got offshoring? Okay. It's a nightmare. In the United States, they were doing that. And now what they're doing, Citibank, how many people have heard of Citi? Citi has gone back now to hiring full-time employees. Because what we found in the United States is, and it's the only thing the Americans ever found, and I'm originally Canadian, and I'm still Canadian. That tell you something? Okay. Offshoring doesn't work, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not being blanketed because of the fact that you will end up doing the work yourself. Because they try 16 times to get it right, and it's never right. Okay? So much for my own personal opinions. Just been there, and I have done that. Okay. The data volume landed up being too large for this particular SQL server, and we went to Oracle. We had a look at Oracle as well, and I've done a lot of Oracle work in the past too. Okay? So it doesn't work. We didn't do our global homework, is basically speaking what happened because of the various different requirements that happened, etc. All right? The question that is very, very important is this. Do you want a data repository or do you want a warehouse? Now, these are no-brainers, as we say in the United States. It's not really an intelligent statement. I mean, this is a duh. It's a, we know this. But, sometimes saying you know it and what actually you do at work are two different things. All right? Understand, my understanding is that I spoke to a person that used to be the project manager who has now left there, that they're thinking of taking this whole thing and porting it back from SQL Server over to the mainframe. And that's just because of volume. Nothing wrong with anything else. It was just a problem of data. You're dealing with millions and billions of records. How many people, again, the people that are working with positions, am I accurate? It's billions and billions of rows. Okay? In short, what we should have done is measure twice before cutting. And that's a very important lesson that you got to learn. Okay? Aggregations. Oh, this is one of my favorites. Okay? 3 years ago when I left State Street, I went to go and work for a company in the northern United States called My Web Grocer. Now, we had a client, and the client, whose name was Nielsen. Have anybody ever heard of the Nielsen ratings? Okay, you've heard of the Nielsen. They're a company that go and rate things. For instance, what shows do you like? What are popular shows, and etc., and what are the ratings? And if you get a good Nielsen rating, you're all set. Okay? They were looking at the online grocery business, and this is a very big thing in the United States. People order from some of the big markets. Like, for instance, how many people know Aldi? Okay. Aldi is in the United States, and sometimes they have a home service that you can go and call up, and they deliver it over to your house for the groceries. They don't have Aldi there like they have here in Germany. Okay? It's mostly food. Okay. The problem is, when I arrived there, they had everything in categories. Right down from breakfast food all the way down to a box of Kellogg's cornflakes. Okay, now, the problem was I had a load every month end, and I would process the thing through a cube. But there were also results that had to be an MDX cube, multidimensional. But there were also things that these people wanted to do. They wanted to get aggregations on a weekly basis, in a sense that this week, last week, and for each 20 of the 26 weeks past an individual aggregation for these things, they wanted to be able to do it. Now, the problem was there was so much data there and the structure was not right that it would take them over 6 minutes to get the results, if they did get the results. Now, if you're using a proxy server, when does that server time out? After 5 minutes. Now, Microsoft will tell you that you can change the timing on it. How many people are here from Microsoft besides the gentleman at the end? Anybody here from Microsoft? Great! They tell you it can be done, but in practice it has not been able to be done because no matter what you set the thing, it times out after 5 minutes. As a result, you got an orphan process. And you get a whole pile of orphan processes, and you know what happens to your main server. It goes down. When the client found out they couldn't get the results, what I did was I basically said, look, the data takes too long to be able to add the way you want over 26 one file. I'm saying it literally, one file, you know, week after week. Last week, the week before, the week before, the week. You get the idea. So I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have to, because I didn't tell them because the structure was bad. I just said because the data is complex. I said what we're going to do is we're going to do a summation of the data and we'll produce 26 monthly weekly files for you so that when you come in on Monday morning, you will have those 26 files, 26 reports hooked up to them, SSRS reports, hooked up to these things, already pre-aggregated, and it took them less than 4 seconds to go and bring the thing up from the server, which was great. And they loved it. But each one of those files, the whole load took from 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday till 6 o'clock on Monday morning to go and aggregate that crap. Because the design was improper. So that's what I've learned. That's what we should all learn. Okay? Now, that's a typical type of thing. I was going to try and come up with something better than this, but you know, I just didn't have the time. Well, this is an example of something that we did, but unfortunately, this is about 200,000 rows, and it came through in 4 seconds, and it really wasn't worth showing to you. But that's the type of aggregation that you would get. Category 1, 2, 3, and there were 4 more categories underneath it. And you try and aggregate that, and it's it's not, you know, uniform 5 levels. Some had 3 levels, some had 2 levels. You get the idea, okay? But the problem is when you're dealing with millions and millions of rows to try and get aggregate dollars and bring everything up, it's difficult, okay? But that's for another day. Part 2, this is my favorite. You know, everybody's got a peeve, and this is my peeve. I got involved, unfortunately, in this project that my current company is working with, and I got involved at a late stage because they were looking for somebody that had a bit of SQL Server knowledge to do a SQL Server revamp and put it up in the cloud. But guess what? I'm the only SQL Server guy, and I wasn't involved in the project right from the word go. Okay? I don't see any surprised people here, or you're basically speaking, you know what happens in a business, and you also know that you're fast asleep. But that's beside the point. Okay, they decided in their infinite wisdom that they wanted to put it up in the cloud. Why do they want to put it up in the cloud? Not because it's going to be more efficient, but because everybody else is putting it up in the cloud. How many people figure that's okay? Now, how many people can see banking information put up in the cloud? Good. Okay. How many people would like their financial figures put up in the cloud? Okay? All right. Well, this is our financial system, and they decided in their infinite wisdom to go and put it up in the cloud. Okay. Right. Now, I have a data warehouse that I inherited. How many people have data warehouses that they've inherited? Okay, need I say more? All right. Now, when I got involved in this thing, I said to them, look, I have 150 reports that tap off this thing. Now, I'm not a good DBA. I'm an application DBA. I like my reports to work, don't break them. They're working, don't break them. So I said to them, what we're going to do, I said to my boss, here's what we're going to do. They can go put any friggin' thing that they want up in the cloud. What I want them to do is, these are the list of the fields that we need to pull, and we need to make sure that the mommy record can reach the baby records in the subtable where the foreign key is. But you know, you get the idea, because that's the way you had to talk. And it's not degrading, it's just that they don't have the knowledge that we have. Did the team that was managing the project think that one out? No, and I'll prove my point in a minute. Okay? Next. What I said to them I want, when they finally asked me what I want. You want to go and put the database up in the cloud? No problem. I'll tell you what I need. I'll tell you how I need to connect the data and put it together again. I want to put it into the warehouse, and I'll redesign the staging tables. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. The thing isn't broken, and I'm not going to do it. I don't mind redoing the staging tables, but I certainly am not going to redesign the warehouse, which everybody's using, and there's reports hooked up to the warehouse. Okay, and everything's denormalized there. All right, so this is a lesson I learned. It ain't broken, don't fix it. But then again, that's because I'm an application developer, DBA, everything else like that except a proper DBA. And I believe in doing things, getting it done first, as opposed to doing a PhD thesis on a query. So I'm wrong. Okay. The issue that they had, they had contractors that came in to do this thing, and I know it doesn't come out very, very clear there, but I like the silo thing. They created, the scenario. They've been working on this thing for 4 months. 4 months. Vier Monaten. 4. You got to see what they came up with. Okay? They came up with everything like that. They were old tables. They took the fields, one field from each, a couple of fields from each table, and put them up there. No, that's not what it is. How are we going to get things to join? Well, wait a minute. Why do you need things to join? In the you have the warehouse. Yes, but we need new feed. We need to get this continual feed. We're downstream from you. What you're planning to do is, basically speaking, is trying to get things to, to give us the new data that's coming in. Okay. All right. So that's the issue they had. Okay. Moving on. That's 4 months' work. Whereas the original structure is something like that. But I went through it, and you can see I've commented out the fields that we don't need. All right? You get the idea? That's what I'm dealing with. Don't do it. Retaining the existing warehouse structure means, basically speaking, less changes to the reports, etc., in a format of the reports that the people love. Think of your users. Think of your end users that you've got, that you've done reports for. They love the reports, don't they? Because they're not down your neck every day to go and change it. Why change it? It isn't broken. And that's what I'm after. Okay? And staging tables are easy enough to go and change if you have to go and change them. Let's be honest. How many people work with staging tables? They're not that difficult. Nobody ever sees them, and as you go and change them, nobody really worries about them, as long as you get the stuff in the right order, correct? Right, good. Okay. The lesson that I also learned in here was the exploration state of the project needs to be all-encompassing. What are we missing? They didn't do it. They didn't do their homework. This is the big thing that got me. This has got me for the whole thing, and I'll tell you what, I came home when I found out this, and I was shaking. My wife says to me, what's wrong? I mean, you can't explain it to her. She doesn't know anything about a computer. She just know, and I'm not knocking her. She just doesn't understand what's involved in this type of thing as we do, okay? The requirements basically for the downstream were not right, okay? And the contractors, this is the big thing. They have an outsourced contractor here to go and do it, okay? They did not understand it, all right? They're still doing rediscovery 28 days prior, and this is when I put this thing together. The drop-dead date is the 24th, and we're sitting at the 4th today. That's 3 weeks that they got to get everything right. And we all know that they're not going to meet the deadline. Okay? Project management must have their finger on the pulse, and the contractors had us doing the work. And this is something that gets me. Okay? And I'll show you in a minute. When do the contractors have you doing the work? Okay? I'm sorry, I love we're doing work, but I cannot put the cart before the horse, or having the cart pull the horse. All right? And having the right people and doing things perfectly. How many people go to meetings and find them constructive? Yeah, exactly. Okay? I rest my point. I got this. This is beautiful, and I'm not going to tell you his name. Here are the table specifications. That's from the contractor. That we would like to have you provide. I'm hoping that you can create 2 tables type of thing. Unfortunately, I don't have the table schemas. Once we can integrate this type of thing with the CRM type of, the basic they're doing in Dynamics, etc. By the way, this is a great resource that you put in. All right, I'll tell you about that in a second. Okay, yours faithfully, the contractor. So he's giving me my jobs that I must do. That's wrong. Next. Forget the left-hand portion. It wasn't meant as advertising. My answer to the solution was, what they had to do is they had to, basically speaking, do a load from the tables and produce CSV files at any time of the day. They could it could be 2 files, it could be 1 file, whatever it may be. And I came up with a method that the system would read from a SQL Server table and produce CSV files on a particular drive and incorporate the date and the time in the thing, a timestamp, into the name of the title of the file. So we could do as many as reports as there are minutes in the day. All right? I put it together. I sent him the link to this article, and I got back a reply saying it won't work. What do you mean it won't work? I just sent you some screen dumps again showing you how the files have been created. So this is another thing. You land up, and I've known this, look, all joking aside, I've been in business for 40 years, like many of us here. If you want something done right, what do you have to do? Do it yourself. Am I lying? Okay. All right, that's basically speaking what it is. All right, so what lessons can we learn about it? Again, this I've been hunting for years. Anybody ever seen that type of thing? Okay, you get the idea? All right. Remove any unnecessary fields from your tables prior to the migration. All right. The existing source that I was using, because I inherited it too, had a lot of null fields. So I said if it's null from the time that it started till present day, the chances are that that field's not going to be used again. Fair statement? Let's make it smaller. All right. Previous warehouse, the guy brought it in 1-to-1. I think it was the easiest answer because I don't think he really understood it either. Okay, and I didn't either at the beginning. All right. Decide what is imperative now and also consider the next 18 to 24 months. And this is something you ought to really think about. However, getting back to my fields story, if it hasn't been used in 10 years and there's nothing in there now, the chances of it getting used in the next 2 years is not really strong unless you decide to change something. Okay? All right. Consult with the downstreams. This is important. How can you run a flipping project and not check with your downstreams? That's a lesson I learned. Okay? And often, okay, this is thought of as a no-brainer, but it does happen in real life, checking with the downstreams. And to prove my point, I got a call just before I left Boston a couple of days ago from the guy who's in charge of the application and development. He's doing the contract. He does the independently. We have our own people that do contracts out. So, a solution provider. He said he would like this information. Has it been included in the warehouse, in the new redesign for the cloud? Well, guess what? They didn't consult with him either. And these are the guys that are bringing in the money. So I rest my case. I really do. That's something very, very important. Okay? All right. Remove any unnecessary fields from the table structure, which the new table structure. You don't want that if you're not going to use it. All right? Ensure that the SSIS loads from the new data source straight into the staging tables creates no issues for the warehouse. That's a no-brainer. Right? And now is the time for the report cleanup. How many people have reports that are every single report that you've developed is being used? Okay? Some are, some aren't. Fair statement? Do you know which report? I'm not asking you to tell me, but can you tell me which reports are being used and which are not? You can. Some people can. How many people can How many people can't tell exactly what it is? Okay, I'm going to show you something. I put something together, another little thing I knocked up. Okay, we'll see it in a minute. Ascertain which reports are used, which are not used at all, and they remove any unused reports. So how do you do it? I put together a little one that shows for the 3-month period how many reports have been executed in total. We're going to have a look at that in a minute in an actual live demo. The next one thing tells you the total number of executed queries for executed periods. It's the same thing as the graph, but in a whole pile of, in a matrix rather. You can see the figures there. Here's the good one, the top of the pops, top 5 that have been run for a period of time, which is quite useful. And then the reports over the period that were used, active reports that have been used, and who used them. You want it, it's yours. I got a copy of it here on the thing. You can go and connect it up to your own system. All right? And the reports that are not being used. Now, is that cool? Another thing you got from coming here. All right? Demo. Oh. We're there. Ah, okay. That's the report. Bringing it up, there's your values. There are the total report counts that have been used. Active reports over the same period of time. And those reports that haven't been used. And no surprise, junk has not been used. Okay? Because we all have our own pet junk things that we go and create to try and run to test the thing that we forget to take away or to tend to remove. Okay? So, that's another cool little thing. This took me, without a word of lie, less than 30 minutes to put together. Okay. Yeah, I know we've seen that. I apologize to you. Just lost the thing. Meanwhile, back at the ranch. How many minutes have we got? How much? 12. Okay. Okay. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, the takeaways that I wanted you to take away. Besides for getting things right the second time, because we normally don't get it right the first time. Okay? You can have your regular meetings. And I'll tell you one thing, and I'm looking at you straight in the face, and again, I have to go to church on Sunday if I'm sinning. I told my boss when I got hired with the firm that I'm with right now, I don't do meetings. You don't want me? No problem. I'll go someplace else, but I do not do meetings. Now, that's not literal, but you know what I'm talking about. I don't sit through useless meetings. We have to have meetings to hold a meeting, to hold a meeting, to hold a meeting. You know, anything goes wrong, hold a meeting. All right? So I don't do meetings. But if you're going to have regular meetings, make sure that they're constructive. And I'll tell you what will stop a meeting happening, take minutes. And action points. And that'll stop the meetings. Because people then have to assume responsibility and accountability for what they're doing. Milestones, I've learned that. People have to have carrots in front of their nose, that they have to have something finished by a certain period of time, or else the doo-doos fall. Or as my wife would like to say, skate, skate, they built 8. All right? To avoid the changes, basically speaking to the 200 reports, the warehouse changes depended upon the effectiveness of the design. In other words, in the second case here, I don't want to change 200 odd reports. Basically, what I want to do is change the design of the staging tables. That's easier. How many people have tried to rework a report and somehow it never really works the same way as it worked before? Okay? Avoid getting into the project, basically speaking, with preconceived ideas. In other words, denormalize. The problem that we all have, and I know we've all got the sleepies, but I'm going to finish up shortly. I think the problem that we have, for all intents and purposes, that when we have a project, we all tend to want to go and make it a transactional database instead of making it basically a warehouse. And I think this, if you think about it, it's true. We got to remember to denormalize, because it's been put into our minds that we got to have things normalized ever since COD. I hate that guy, the combination Boyce and COD. I hate them. Whatever happened to hierarchies? They were great. But all joking aside, I think the problem is we tend to denormalize a hell of a lot more than we should. All right? Number 2, communication. This is my favorite, and I'm not a businessman. I've just been through the school of hard knocks. How many people have been through the school of hard knocks? Learning from your mistakes. How many people have been through that school? Yeah. Okay? Communicate. That's the problem. And this is the main problem that we have with the existing project right now. How can you forget the downstreams? And that's an issue. Okay? Right. Because at the end of the day, basically speaking, it boils down to a case of dollars, cents, euros, whatever you want, which is really more the reason why we can all learn from other professionals of the challenges to designing financial warehouses. All men. All right? Please, guys, fill in your forms, your evaluation forms. If you make my rating lousy, they won't ask me back again next year. So, you know what I mean? But all joking aside, fill them in. They're very, very important to, for the committee to decide what's going on. I'll entertain any questions. Otherwise, class dismissed.